Somewhere in the middle of a desert, where the air shimmers with heat and the ground stretches flat and pale in every direction, something extraordinary is happening. Sand, the material you step over, the material children build castles from, the material most people would never look twice at, is being pulled from the earth, purified, transformed, and reborn as one of the strongest transparent materials humans have ever engineered. Not the glass you think of when you think of glass. Something tougher. Something that can take a punch, survive a temperature swing, resist a scratch, and still let light pass through it like water through air. Most people assume glass is simple. Sand plus heat equals glass. That is the story we learned somewhere, and most of us never questioned it. But inside this factory, inside this place that does not advertise itself, that does not post on social media, that operates behind security fences and non-disclosure agreements, the process is something entirely different. This is not a factory that melts sand. This is a factory that forces sand to become something it has no intention of being on its own.
I drove 3 hours from the nearest city to reach this facility. This remote location is home to operations that have been shrouded in secrecy for years. There are no signs at the turnoff. The road leading here is unmarked on most maps. But behind those walls, a process is running around the clock, 7 days a week, that most of us will never see.
Here is the part most people never realize. Desert sand, despite being made mostly of silicon dioxide, the same chemical compound that glass is built from, is actually a terrible starting material for most conventional glass manufacturing. The grains are wrong. The chemistry is wrong. The impurities are wrong. When sand sits in a desert for thousands of years, wind does something to it. It tumbles the grains. It rounds them. It polishes them smooth. This sounds like it should be helpful, but in the glass industry, rounded grains are a problem. They pack together differently than angular grains. They move through machinery differently. And in a furnace, that difference matters more than you would expect. But the real enemy is not the shape of the grains. The real enemy is what is hiding inside them. Desert sand accumulates iron compounds, organic materials, trace minerals, feldspar, calcium deposits, and dozens of other chemical guests that have no place in a precision melt. Even concentrations measured in parts per million can alter the outcome.
This is the raw material intake zone, where the journey of our glass begins. Mountains of pale sand are sitting in covered bays, protected from additional contamination. Trucks have been arriving since before sunrise. Workers in protective gear are collecting samples from every single load before it is even unloaded. They call this stage gatekeeping. If the sand does not pass here, it does not go any further.
The factory's first challenge is not heat. It is chemistry. Before any grain of sand sees a furnace, it goes through a process that most industrial facilities in the world would consider extreme. It starts with sorting, not random sifting, precision separation. The sand is screened through a series of vibrating mesh systems, each calibrated to filter grains by size. Too large, too small, wrong shape, wrong density. Each impurity has a weakness, and each step is designed to exploit that weakness. Then comes washing. The sand is flooded with water in large rotating drums. This removes surface dust, clay particles, and a portion of the organic material that accumulates on grains over centuries of desert exposure. The water that drains out of these drums is a murky, rust-colored liquid that tells you exactly how much contamination was sitting on that sand before it entered the process.
This is the washing station, where the raw materials are cleaned and prepared, an essential step in our process. It smells like minerals and wet earth. The drums turn slowly and constantly. And the water running off them is a brown-red color that almost looks like rust. A technician told me they analyzed that runoff water too, because the chemistry of what comes off the sand tells them what was on it.
Washing is only the beginning. After the sand is washed, it enters magnetic separation. This is where the iron begins to lose its fight. Powerful electromagnets are positioned along conveyor belts carrying the damp, clean sand. Iron-bearing particles are magnetic enough to be pulled off the stream. They cling to the magnetized rollers, and they're scraped away continuously. But one pass is not enough. The sand goes through multiple magnetic stages, each one stronger than the last, each one pulling out finer and finer concentrations of iron contamination. Here is why that matters. Iron, even in very small concentrations in molten glass, produces color. It gives finished glass a greenish tint. That tint might be acceptable in a wine bottle or a window frame, but an ultra-strong specialty glass destined for a smartphone screen, an aircraft display, or a high-precision optical system, it is completely unacceptable. Iron ruins optical clarity. Iron also interferes with the uniformity of the melt, creating weak zones at the microscopic level that can eventually become catastrophic failures.
Over here, you can see the magnetic separation rollers running continuously. The sand flows over them in a thin, even stream, and tiny dark particles are constantly being pulled away and falling into collection bins. What stays on the belt looks cleaner, lighter, more uniform. The technicians call this the first reveal of the sand's true quality.
After magnetic separation, the sand undergoes chemical washing in an acid leaching process. This is where the more stubborn contaminants, the ones that do not respond to magnets, are removed by chemical reaction. The exact acids and concentrations used are proprietary, but the general principle involves mild acidic solutions that react with surface minerals, dissolving them away from the silica grains. What you're left with after acid leaching is a silica content that can reach well above 99% purity. Some premium batches push toward 99.9% and beyond. This level of purity is not achieved by accident. It is the result of years of process refinement, and it represents the invisible foundation that everything else in this factory depends on. Without this purity at the beginning, no amount of engineering precision at any later stage can save the final product.
I asked a quality control manager how often a batch fails at this stage. She said more often than people think. Sand from different zones of the same desert can have wildly different iron content and mineral profiles. The variability is constant, and so is the monitoring.
Now comes the part of the process where the factory begins to look less like a mining operation and more like a chemistry laboratory. Once the purified silica has been verified and accepted, it enters the batching room. This is where the formula lives, and this formula is treated like a state secret. Depending on the final type of ultra-strong glass being produced, the silica is blended with a precisely measured combination of additional materials. Soda ash, sodium carbonate, is typically added because it acts as a flux, lowering the melting temperature of the silica and making it more manageable in the furnace. Limestone introduces calcium oxide into the final glass structure, which improves durability and chemical stability. Aluminum oxide, is often added in controlled amounts to increase hardness and resistance to deformation. Some formulations include boron compounds, which improve thermal resistance and reduce thermal expansion. In chemically strengthening glass, specific alkali profiles are engineered into the base composition from the very beginning, because the strengthening that comes later depends heavily on the chemistry of what went into the furnace.
The batching room is climate controlled and quiet. The sealed ingredient stations ensure precision, and the sophisticated workers move around stations where precise quantities of powders are weighed, logged, confirmed, and mixed. One technician told me they weigh some additives to within a fraction of a gram per batch. In an industry measured in tons, That level of precision is remarkable.
The exact recipe, the ratios, the sequence, the temperatures at which specific additives are introduced, this information does not leave the building. Competing manufacturers have spent enormous resources trying to reverse engineer formulations that have taken decades to develop. In this industry, chemistry is intellectual property. And inside that recipe lies the difference between glass that shatters like ordinary material and glass that can survive conditions most materials cannot. When the batch is fully mixed, it looks like nothing special. A fine, pale powder with a slightly granular texture. It looks almost like the sand it came from. But the chemistry inside that powder is already preparing for the next stage, the most dramatic, the most dangerous, and the most consequential stage in the entire process.
I'm now being escorted to the furnace level. The protective equipment requirement changes here. Full face shield, layered thermal protection on the arms, and I was told to keep a certain distance at all times. Even before you see the furnace, you feel it. The temperature in the corridor is already significantly above what you would call comfortable.
Wait until you see what happens inside the furnace, because this is where everything the factory has done up to this point is either confirmed or destroyed. The furnace is the heart of this operation, and it is not a modest piece of equipment. It is a structure unto itself, built from specialized refractory materials, lined with ceramic composites that can tolerate conditions that would melt ordinary steel. Inside, temperatures routinely reach approximately 1,500 degrees Celsius, and in some specialty melt operations they push higher, depending on the composition of the batch. At this temperature, silica, which in its raw form has an extremely high melting point, begins to break down. The sodium carbonate releases gases and begins to react. The calcium compounds integrate. The alumina dissolves into the melt, and the entire batch slowly, over hours, transforms from a pale powder into a liquid that glows with a deep, living orange light.
Through the viewing port, the melt looks almost alive. It moves slowly, like a liquid that cannot quite decide if it is still a solid. The color is an intense, deep amber orange, and it seems to pulse when the burners adjust. Nothing I have seen in any industrial setting looks quite like this.
And here's what makes this particular factory in this particular place in the desert so significant beyond its engineering. The desert itself is not just a supply of raw material. It is an argument that the harshest, most resource-limited environments on Earth can become places of advanced manufacturing, if the engineering is right. The desert has abundant silica sand. It has sunlight in quantities that few other regions can match. Solar energy can power the enormous thermal demands of a glass furnace. The same glass this factory produces is used in solar panels, which are being installed across desert regions at a scale that is reshaping global energy systems. There's a circular logic to this that is almost elegant. The desert makes the glass. The glass captures the sun. The sun powers the factory. The factory makes more glass. For regions that have historically exported raw materials and imported finished goods, a facility like this represents something larger than industrial capacity. It represents a claim on the future, that a place defined by its harshness can define itself instead by its sophistication.
Before I leave, I asked one of the senior engineers what he thought about working here, in a desert, making glass from sand. He paused for a moment and said something I am still thinking about. He said the desert teaches you not to waste anything, because out here, every mistake becomes expensive very quickly. Every grain that passes quality control matters. Every degree of temperature matters. Every hour the furnace runs matters. What struck me most is that this factory is not fighting the desert. It is learning from it. The desert has no patience for carelessness, and neither does this process. Even the water, the dust, the heat, and the silence outside these walls become part of the calculation.